If the canals are left to the mercies of economists and scientific planners, before many years are past, the last of them will become a weedy, stagnant ditch, and the bright boats will rot in the wharves, to live on only in old men's memories.
I've been a boater and enjoying canals and indeed involved with the restoration of some canals over the last 20-25 years. It's been a great privilege, I think, to have lived at a time when we see so much reawakening interest in canals, as not only as a means of enjoyment, but as bringing a lot of life back into different parts of the country. One of the big changes, of course, that's happened is that while the leisure use of canals is blossoming all the time and burgeoning and getting stronger every day, the commercial use has practically died out, although there are a few people who still make use of it, thank God. But one of the effects of this has been that the towns round which canals skirt, which used to sometimes have arms which went into the towns themselves for commercial purposes. These arms, these arteries, if you like, which spring from the towns out into the canal system, have sometimes gone into disrepair. There's one particular I'm thinking of, which is Slough. The 5-mile arm into Slough, which is very attractive, is well worth travelling, and it would be great to see the last bit of the canal, beyond the winding hole, where at the moment everybody turns, goes back, developed in order to reach the heart of Slough.
Very few canals can boast having been built after the coming of the railways, but also having successfully competed against them, albeit for just a few years. Such is the case of the Slough arm of the Grand Union Canal, the last narrow canal to be built in England. Yet few people know the fascinating history and heritage of this little-known and little-used canal. The building of the Slough arm was originally proposed in 1878, and required an Act of Parliament before construction could begin. The major opponents to the Act, finally approved in July 1879, were the Great Western Railway Company and Eton College. Yet despite much opposition, the Act was the first such canal construction act to be sanctioned since 1795. Construction of the canal started at Cowley Peachy at the beginning of 1880, under the supervision of the engineer Alfred Walker. The arm was finally completed and opened on the 4th of December 1882. As predicted by Hubert Thomas, the Slough arm gave a major boost to the local brick-making industry. Local resident Winnie Blackwell recalls,
"There was 2 brickfields then. There was one somewhere the other side of it or something, you know. Because if the weather was wet, they couldn't work. They made them and they had to dry. They weren't like they do nowadays in factories. They were really good bricks in those days."
As well as taking a trip down memory lane, let's take a trip down the Slough arm. In addition to the toll imposed by the Canal Company, the Slough arm was somewhat unique in that narrowboats conveying coal had to pay an additional tax to the City of London at the point where they passed this coal tax marker. By the 1940s, most of Britain's canals had become little more than derelict, desolate, dirty ditches. But one man, having cruised the canals in the Midlands, saw them as an asset worthy of preservation and restoration, which he described in great detail in his 1944 book Narrowboat.
To step down from some busy thoroughfare onto the quiet towpath of a canal, even in the heart of a town, is to step backwards 100 years or more and see things in a different and perhaps more balanced perspective. The rush of traffic on the road above seems to become a purposeless scurrying of an overturned anthill beside the unruffled calm of the water, which even the slow passage of boats does not disturb.
By the early 1960s, the Slough Observer reported that Slough Council had a plan to buy part of the canal, fill it in and use it as part of a ring road to link London Road to the world-famous Slough trading estate. Engineer and canal enthusiast Mike Timms was one who took up the gauntlet to challenge the council.
When I got married in 1966, I came to live at Ivor, and I knew that there was some problem with the Slough Arm, that it was in some danger. We'd started taking the Slough Observer newspaper, and I noticed occasional articles were appearing in there, and that there was to be a meeting. So I gradually made contact with the group of people who eventually became what we called ourselves the Slough Canal Group. Our idea was we would campaign to show what a good asset the Slough Canal could be to the town, while the residents would take on the council about what a ghastly business the road would be if it was built. The opposition was so good and so well organised, the Borough Council was persuaded to commission consultants to conduct a review of its road plans. At the end of it all, they recommended that the ring road should not be built, and therefore we now still have the Slough Canal, I'm pleased to say.